Okay, so what we're going to talk about, at least to start with today, was my idea, and it's something that's been on my mind for a couple of weeks now, honestly, and that's the idea of things being overcharged when it comes to the criminal system. And it's not just as simple as, okay, you got pulled over and you had this headlight violation or something. The next thing you know, you're arrested and you've got 5 or 6 other charges on top of the civil infraction. And you would think it would be isolated, but the more and more court we watch, it feels like the more and more we see this sort of thing. So I went out and did a little bit of digging and a little bit of looking around. And I want to share 2 cases with you real quick to just kind of maybe set the tone, and then we can have the discussion from there. But back in 2011, there was this guy named Aaron Schwartz, and he was an internet activist, and he got charged with mass downloading academic articles, which is weird, but it was a federal charge. They indicted him on 13 felony
What a
counts.
monster.
Yep. They indicted him on 13 felony counts because they gave him a charge for like each thing that he downloaded.
Okay.
And it carried up to 35 years in prison rather than just charging, hey, you did this thing. They gave him a separate charge for each time. They offered him a plea bargain, though, with only 6 months in jail if he agreed to pleading guilty to all 13 felonies. So they hold this big, anvil over his head.
Yeah.
And then say, well, we'll plead you down to 6 months, but you have to plead guilty to all 13 felonies. So he'll be a 13 times felon if he goes for it. And then another case, again, this one was at the federal level, just coincidentally, but it was one that caught my eye. And this was a guy named Weldon Angelos, and this was in 2004. He was 24 years old, and they caught him selling a small amount of marijuana to an informant. But at the time, he possessed a handgun. So they charged him with 3 separate counts of using a gun during a crime on top of the distribution, which all added together carried consecutive sentences that got him 55 years if convicted on all counts. They offered him a plea of 15, which is still really harsh for selling weed. I get that it's illegal and all that, but 15 years for, being the guy who hands somebody a bag of weed is a little bit much to me.
Distribution.
But Angelos refused. He went to trial. It didn't go his way. He ended up with all 55 years.
Yikes.
So, with all of that in mind, those 2 examples in mind of relatively simple things that have been overcharged, overdone, and then, the punishments are insane to begin with, and then they try to offer these pleas down, just holding this anvil over your head. This whole thing just kind of bothers me, but I would like to know you guys' thoughts on it, and where you're at with it. But it's something that's just been on my mind for days or weeks now.
I wonder
It really
if
bothers me.
I wonder if we can kind of ease your mind a little bit, because let's say this defendant actually did do this, right?
Which defendant actually did what?
Well, he was found convicted. He was convicted, correct?
Are you talking about the second one, Weldon Angelos?
Well, he got in trouble, right?
But are we talking about the drug guy?
I thought,
or the first guy? I gave you 2 examples.
okay, either one. So when you take a plea, so they took a plea, correct?
No, the first guy took a plea. They held 35 years over his head for downloading material.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like child stuff or anything. It was news articles. They held 35 years over his head and offered him a 6-month plea. And yes, he took that. But Weldon Angelos, they held 55 years over his head because he was selling weed but happened to have a gun with him at the time. And then they offered him a plea of 15. He refused, went to trial, and was found guilty on all counts and got the full 55. His life is over.
I don't see anything wrong with that. I don't mean to bury the lead. I kind of, I should have delayed it in a better way, but
Well,
he was advised. Here's the thing: an attorney has to, they have to talk to their clients and let them know about a plea, considering a plea. They have to have that discussion. Attorneys are trained to also kind of read the room and see, and they'll look at all the evidence and they'll go through everything and be like, hey, I think you have a really good case. This should go to trial. The odds are I think we'll win. Or, dude, if we go to trial, man, you might get, the 55 years. So I think the 15 might be a good plea.
okay.
And
but
a defendant at that point has a choice. And,
I agree with you, but I think you're missing what I'm getting at here a little bit, Bailey, and that's were these people, and these are just two examples of thousands. These are just two examples that I pulled, and we see it in the courts that we watch too.
yeah.
Are these people being overcharged? Is it stacking charges on these guys so that there's this huge, again, an anvil over their head with Acme stamped on it that's going to fall on them unless they cop to a plea?
There's
again,
there's a huge anvil and piano hanging over their head as they're going into the plea negotiations. Right.
But is that right? Is that just? Is that really what we want out of our legal system? Okay, yeah, the dude was selling weed. Okay. I'm not a fan of it, and it is illegal at a federal level, so I get that. But then they throw a gun charge on top of it, and they take somebody who was just, in the grand scheme of crimes, was this such a great crime? Probably not. Is it worth 55 years? His life's done. He was 24 at the time.
It must have been like his second something or something. It wasn't his first crime. You know what I mean? Like, nobody gets that much time for.
So, you're like pro weed, Bailey. How are you suddenly on the side of putting this guy away for 55 years?
I'm confused.
Because
are you feeling okay? Did you bump your head?
No, because I'm saying I follow the law, and I'm sorry, I disagree with how Texas wants to do things, but Texas does things the way Texas does, and that's the law.
Is it a good application of the law to be stacking so many charges, especially on lower level offenses? Does it serve society? Is putting that guy away for 55 years?
Well, I'll feel a lot better knowing that guy selling weed is off the street. Boy.
Unfortunately, like we said, we don't really actually solve things here on Sidebar. I would need to know a lot more information to be able to answer that question more holistically.
Well, we're talking more in general. Again, we're keying in on this one case, I suppose, because I gave it as an example. But he's actually been in prison 20 of his 55 years now. But we see this in court all the time too.
Yeah.
How many times do we see somebody walk into Judge Middleton's court, for example, and they've been charged with no insurance and driving suspended and all these things, and then they go, but here's something for you. If you act now and you plead to allowing another, we'll just fine you $250 and put it in the city's coffers.
President's Day sale this weekend only.
Well, it's funny because I always call this to me this is like Black Friday justice. So what they do is on Black Friday, so in the weeks leading up to it, what they do is little spoiler alert for those of you that think you're getting a great deal on Black Friday. Yeah. So retailers, they mark stuff up before Black Friday. Then Black Friday comes around, they're like 30% off. And what they did was they just marked it back down to where it was like in mid-October. And so you think you're getting a good deal. Or what they'll do is they'll throw in some loss leader. They'll be like, hey, you buy this and we'll give you some, $20 gift certificate to something. So you think you're getting a good deal, but it's really not. They marked it up. So it's the same thing here. It's like the equivalent of a guy is speeding, right? He's speeding down 35th Avenue. Then he turns onto Glendale and he's still speeding. Then he turns onto 27th Avenue. It'd be like giving him 3 speeding tickets because he sped on 3 different roads. It's dumb. I have never understood. And then on top of that, they'll be like, yeah, and you also had a taillight out and you weren't wearing your seatbelt and your ashtray. That's not safe. And you had fuzzy dice hanging from your rearview mirror and you can't do that. And your window tint is 5% too much. And it's like, what? Really? To me, it's punitive. It just seems like a way to make a little extra cash. And it's also a way to make sure that someone pleas and they don't go to trial. Because if you're holding that much over someone's head, they're probably going to be more inclined to plea, because the gamble is if you go to trial and you lose, you could be facing all this other stuff. And that's why I hate the stacking of charges thing. To me, it's yeah.
In my opinion, I don't agree with the stacking of charges for minor offenses as well. Now, I said minor offenses. Now, if you're getting up to a more severe charge, then I think that's fair, because they're probably going to be in prison for a while anyway. But for minor offenses, I do not agree. I think it's unfair. And holding that carrot over somebody's head, I mean, it impacts their whole future too. I mean, if you're pleading if you're pleading for multiple charges, how does that look on your record? So when you do get out, or if you do get whatever plea you get, how does that impact the rest of your life in regards to getting a job or things of that nature? So there's that side to think about as well.
From my experience watching TCF, most times a lot of charges are pled out. In other words, they'll be like, we'll get rid of these charges, this charge. And if they just plead to 1 and 2, count 1 and 2 or something like that. That's why it's really good to get an attorney when you get into these situations. So they work with the state and be like, hey, look, you can totally do this. And they know what the judge might do. They know the judge might go with probation. Like, come on, do you really want to go through a trial? Like, the state doesn't want to go through a trial. That'll save them a whole bunch of time, and maybe their client knows they're guilty. We're forgetting about that, folks. The client may be guilty and just like, you know what? I'll take a plea.
Well, yeah, I mean, they most certainly may be guilty, but
yeah,
but
you're presumed innocent for one.
Yeah.
That and is it justice to throw so many things on top of it? Let me give you another example. You have somebody who's pulled over for some kind of vehicle infraction. Let's say a busted tail light, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And the driver is combative. They don't want to hand over their driver's license. They're talking back over the case. Maybe not an ideal situation, comply, get on with life. It's, but we know there are people that don't. But the next thing we've seen it in the courts that we monitor, all of a sudden they're charged with failure to ID, obstruction of justice, disorderly conduct, if they don't immediately get out of their car, resisting
without violence.
Yeah, all these things, and all of a sudden they're just, this laundry list is attached to this person rather than the police officer just talking the person down off the ledge.
De-escalation.
Which I get, is I'm sure a pain in the ass, but still, sorry, it's your job. And some people are just going to be horrible, but you got to deal with it. But then all these charges follow them into court, and then the prosecutor goes, well, yeah, you've got all these things, we'll lock you up for a year. But again, if you act now,
we're going to give you a gift, even though really the only thing you really did wrong was you had a busted taillight, and we could have just given you a warning. And maybe you were cranky because maybe you were having a bad day and you got pulled over. And I get that police officers' jobs are tough and all that, but I mean, just stacking charges and then prosecutors doing that and then thinking they're giving somebody a gift. I just don't think justice is served that way. And I think it leads to a feeling of a police state. And I don't like to throw that term around. I think that term is thrown around so like
Right.
liberally, but you know, when the shoe fits, right? So again, just like my example of like, okay, I sped down 3 different roads, so I'm getting 3 different speeding tickets, even though that doesn't happen, but it's
Actually,
It's
I bet
the
it's been
equivalent.
tried.
I'm sure it has.
All right.
Sure it has.
Often, if I'm not mistaken, if judges actually take all of those kind of charges, like in your example, your hypo, they would be served concurrently. You know?
Yes,
So
but the defendant might not.
it's
It is perceived that they'll be serving a long period of time when they're actually
But
not.
the fines could be higher. And here's the other thing. When you have more charges, if something were to happen in the future, rather than just having the busted tail light, now you've got on your record, even though you may have only served a minor amount of time or no time and you pled to this, you still have resisting on your record. You still have, disorderly on your record, even though, all of that stuff could have easily been avoided by not stacking those charges. So now you're looking at maybe a more serious case.
Yeah, they
Where it
become
didn't even,
enhancements.
enhancements, where it didn't even need to happen and it didn't even need to go that way. And I get there are people that do deserve to have punishments, right? This isn't to excuse everybody's bad behavior, right? I'm not here to offer people a free pass just because, you want to be a jerk. But there are just times where something can be resolved very easily. We can move on. We already have an overworked criminal justice system. We already have an overworked, law enforcement. We have overworked this and that. We could really kind of clean up the justice system a bit by making things more efficient by, how about this? Maybe we don't stack 10 charges on somebody for a simple moving violation. How about that?
The time saving, yeah.
Right.
That's another one of my arguments too, Michael, is that it's wasting time pretty much stacking all those charges than having to have a whole hearing just to go through which ones are going to be presented like in a case or in that kind of thing. So
Right.
I agree.
Here's something to think about that just came to mind.
Bailey.
Go ahead, Dan.
As
Go ahead.
Bailey
You go
laughs.
first, man, and I'll
So here's something that just came to mind. So you can argue, and maybe correctly so, that the stacking of charges that we see so often allows for an almost certainty that a larger amount of fine dollars end up in the city's coffers, right? But how much labor time is wasted to go grab those
Right.
dollars from that citizen? I don't, because you're talking about like efficiency and stuff like that. It still has to be a net negative at the end of the day.
Probably even
all
more
of
so.
this stuff is expensive.
Yeah, you got to pay those attorneys. You got to pay all the filing and there's just, it stacks. There's so
if
yeah.
And if you have
I don't know.
if you have gobs of money to throw away like a rich person, yeah, they're more likely to go to trial than someone that takes pleas, because they can't just keep paying their attorney and just paying these. Yeah, it gets expensive. That's
and
why
we see a lot of
that's why they
judges
plead.
often, if they see that someone's destitute, they will actually waive fees, especially if like there's restitution that's owed kind of situations. Like it's like, well, this doesn't actually help the situation. Or if somebody is getting kicked out of their apartment, it's like, okay, well, if I fine them, which I could, this amount of money, it just makes the problem even worse. So we do see that judges make kind of mitigating kind of, they mitigate these kinds of situations case by case.
Where they can. A lot of
Where they
places have
can.
mandatory fees.
Yeah.
Where they
go
can.
to Michigan, one of our favorite places here at TCF. And
Yeah, but
You know.
somebody mentioned, the public defender's office is really busy. I mean, we see this in like Simpson's court, all these courts where we see these same public defenders coming up, and it's like, hey, so and so, on behalf of this person who's walking up right now on my right. All right, can you please state your name for the record? Okay, and These people have been going through file after file after file the night before, getting ready for these guys to try to understand their case, to give them a wholesome and worthy defense that everyone's entitled to, and they're backed up. And so the reason why I was laughing a moment ago, my brother told me this story. He was he got a little bit of trouble with the courts. He got behind on like some parking tickets, and license was suspended, that sort of thing. And then he didn't appear, and then he got a warrant, and so he finally goes to the city court and meets with the public defender and waits forever, and finally gets in there, and a public defender pulls out his file, and he's like, okay. He's like, all right. And he has court, preparing for this. He's like, okay, so this isn't good. He's like, so you didn't show up here, and you didn't, okay. All right, well, that's not good, but it's not the worst thing. All right. Well, all right. So what I think we do is we're going to plea out for like 2 years in prison, just 2. And we're going to go with that, because this is like your 3rd time just not showing up. And he's like, that gun didn't help with that conviction that you had. And my brother was like, what? I didn't have a gun at that. Yeah, I didn't have a gun. He's like, sir, you think that's the first time I've heard this in my office, Brian? And he's like, my name's not Brian. My name's Steven. He's like, oh, this isn't, oh, yeah, okay.
Whoops.
And then he pulls up his case, and he's like, oh, yeah, this is easy. He's like, yeah, just pay the fines, and you're not going to get probation. You'll be like, whatever. But scared my brother to death, because he was like, oh, yeah, I think we're going to go for 2 years. But my point is, public defenders are so busy that it's like they want to, like, they have to take the whole case together and give their clients the best information. It's like, yes, we can absolutely go to trial. I will do that for you. That's my duty. But hey, with the facts, whether they're stacking or not, here's how I see the reality. I do this every day, and I think we should do this, and you think about it. So I think that's a beautiful system. Is it kind of rushed? Yes. Like in my brother's case, this PD was so busy, he confused my brother with a completely different person. He didn't, and it's funny. We can have a great laugh about it, but that's how busy these folks are, and that's how limited time he had to review the case to advise his client of taking a plea. So these guys are pretty backed up.
Well, Bailey, I don't argue any of that. What I'm questioning and what I'm arguing is all the stuff that happens before that meeting.
Mm-hmm.
That's where my problem is. I agree with you that, the public defender's office, especially, they're overworked and underpaid and all that kind of stuff. But I'm talking about everything that happens before we get to that point. Is it right? Is it just that we see so often simple things, or even mildly complex things, where it's a clear charge, but then they throw all these other extras on top of it that end up forcing your hand to just take a plea because it's the lesser of two evils.
Yeah, it does. I think it does force their hand, especially for misdemeanors. I mean, felonies are something different in my head, but in misdemeanor standings, I don't think that is right to do that to people and hold that carrot over their head.
No, and we see it. We see it so often, and it just bothers me. It's not good for the relationship between the government and the public. It's not good for the overworking of the system.
It kind of leaves a bad taste in your mouth with the court system, to be honest. But in my viewpoint, it leaves a bad taste in your mouth. And that's why I don't think someone should be thinking like, I need to take this plea and not go to trial, even though I'm not guilty. It's, I feel I feel a certain way about that.
No. If you are not guilty, do not plead guilty.
People
Yeah,
will,
how did
people,
that work out for the one guy who offered a 15-year plea? He didn't take it because he felt that he wasn't guilty, and then he ended up with the full 55
he
years.
got penalized.
You can't feel whether you're guilty or not. I mean, if I am guilty of something, I might take a plea. You know what I mean? After I have a conversation with my lawyer, my counsel. That's what a counsel's for. But if you are not guilty, absolutely not. I would say don't take the plea. Go for it.
But
Okay.
how many people do though? You know
But
what
the
I mean?
the lawyer's going to have to advise you, like, look, all right, but here's what you might be facing.
All right, well, let's go around the board here for a minute. Who thinks that these extra charges are put in place to force the plea process? I, for one, do. Michael?
Yes, I do as well.
Ashley?
Yes, unfortunately.
Bailey?
No.
Okay. You're outvoted.
3-1, son.
We win. Yay. No, it just
In terms of
I-
misdemeanors, I mean,
Yeah,
felony.
I mean-
in felony charges, yeah.
if we're talking about crimes against children or something like
Yes,
that,
against people.
Well,
load it
that's
up all day long. But that's
yeah, well,
that's
there's
apples with
there's a
pomegranates.
difference. Yeah, there's a huge difference.
Agreed.
But even in sometimes low end felony cases, I think there's stacking of charges to force pleas as well. I mean, or you stack misdemeanors on top of the felonies. So there's a lot of underhanded stuff that goes on in there, and I get it. We can't have everybody going to trial. The system would collapse if everybody did, but that's just a weird way to get some extra money in the coffers and to kind of force things along, in my opinion.
I concur. But Bailey doesn't, but that's okay.
No,
it's okay.
I don't know.
Especially if that defendant doesn't know, like, the charges will run concurrently, like we were mentioning earlier. That's not usually, I don't know if that's usually discussed, if it's going to run concurrently or not. So
I would assume so. I mean, come on.
maybe,
That has to be discussed with,
maybe,
Well, I'll
but
tell
I
you
don't
this:
know for certain though.
the more court I watch, the less I use terms like "that has to be."
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
I
Yeah.
don't know. I agree with you, Bailey, that it's the best system in the world, but I also believe that it has a lot of flaws, and I think the loading of charges is definitely one of them. But
Things would move so much faster if they didn't do that, like we mentioned earlier. Yes.
The best system, but there's a big asterisk too in that we do have too many laws. And I think that in and of itself, and Dan, maybe this is another topic for another day, but I think the one of the problems that we have in the U.S. is that we have 4% of the world's population, and we have 25% of the world's prison population, and there's just so many laws in this country that that's why it's pretty easy to stack charges too, is because you can just throw some random law that almost is never applied. I mean, I've seen some, even just watching TCF, I've seen some stuff that I don't know, that seems very strange, and it seemed tacked on. And I think if we cut down the number of laws that we have on the books and just made things a little bit more streamlined and common sense, do we really need a law on the books that says, hey, you can't have, 6 females living in a domicile in Maricopa County, for example? I mean, do we really need that law? I mean, there's a bunch of laws that we have that we really don't need on the books, I think.